Hi everyone, and welcome to the second last one. So this week we're talking about adrenal hormones and their use with functional pathology in a clinic setting for naturopaths or nutritionists or other health practitioners who might be interested in how to use pathology within their clinical practice. And this week, just like I have every other webinar, I'm going to be discussing how I explain things to my clients first, and then how their results get explained to them and how we can interpret them and make it a little bit more easy and comfortable for us to be able to get across how important the information is for them and how empowered they can be by their numbers instead of worrying about them and being disempowered and disassociated by their numbers. So hopefully everyone can see me this week, and we can ask questions again in the chat box if you feel like it, or feel free to contact me at tammy@tammyguest.com if you've got any other queries and questions. All right, so I'll just share my screen, and we want this one. So today's discussion is around adrenal hormones and how we use them through functional pathology, and how we can explain them to our clients, and how we can feel a bit more confident and empowered by the numbers, and so can our clients. This is purely how I use them in my clinic. I'm sure there's other ways and means to talk about things, so I'll just be sharing with you today how I use them. My focus in my clinic is adrenal fatigue, particularly in entrepreneurs, businesswomen and mums. And I use salivary hormone testing quite a fair bit. Last week's webinar was on salivary hormones. Hopefully you did finally get a chance to have a look at that. We had some technical hiccups, but I'm sure it came through in the end. And the adrenal hormone profile often comes with the female or male salivary hormones as well. The test itself is a spit test, and so you have to spit in 4 tubes at different times of the day. So on waking, midday, around 6 p.m. and about 10 to midnight, 10 p.m. or midnight. So depending on your client and what's going on for them, it might happen to be a different time, and you might be using it to specifically find out what's happening in their fatigue patterns. So it's really important to do it those 4 different times, and some clients can find it a little difficult, particularly those real adrenal ones. They can have a trouble getting out that much saliva. So it's often a chat beforehand, before they do the test, to make sure that they've got enough water on board to be able to spit as well. So we've got a few questions here already. Yes, you can. All of this will be recorded and sent out to you as a recording link. So that's no worries at all. It automatically gets sent out. If you can see this already, you will be sent out the recording, and it automatically comes out 1 hour after the webinar is finished. So I hope you guys have a great day, whoever's listening. I'm at work, I'm sneaking around, my toddler's having a bad day. That's no worries at all. It automatically gets recorded and sent out to you. And they will be available in 2 weeks' time, all on one page. So you will be able to get them all on one page, all in one spot. And hopefully you'll, and if you are watching this all on that one page in that one spot in 2 weeks' time, that you've got access to them forever then, once you've got that access to that one page. So let's get started. So this is how I explain adrenal things to everybody. I've believed that adrenal fatigue is a 3-pronged approach, and I believe that it comes from a mindset perspective, an energetic perspective, and it comes from a biochemical or a physiological perspective. Now, there are plenty of people who are geniuses at mindset. There are plenty of people who are geniuses at energetics and energetic healing. And I happen to have a background in biochemistry, so that's what I do. I explain biochemistry to people. It's the building blocks of what we've got going on physically, and if that physical self doesn't heal itself, then it's very nice that the mindset and the energy is right on track, but if your physical body isn't holding it together, then those changes can't necessarily happen. Generally, I get some really good responses to having this discussion because it really cements in what's actually going on for people. So it's very likely you've seen a very similar biochemical pathway like this before. It's just this one is one that I've used for years, and I'm sure it can be much prettier, but it just gives people an idea about what's going on with their neurotransmitters in particular. So when I'm explaining this to people, what I'll generally talk about is adrenaline and how our adrenaline is originally made to run us away from saber-toothed tigers or immediate stress and danger, particularly a threat to our lives. The thing about that is when we see something that is going to cause us a physical threat, a physical stress, say for instance a saber-toothed tiger, we pump adrenaline to help us fight or flight and get through it. This doesn't just happen with a physical stress, it also happens with a psychological stress, a worry, and an emotional stress. And it will also happen for a mind stress. So when we're thinking too much or using too much of our mental capacity to focus on too many things at once. Often there'll be some aha moments about to-do lists and things like that, that we're creating this biochemistry, no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a physical stress, an emotional stress, a mental stress, or a psychological stress. You're still going to have to create adrenaline to help you get through. Now, adrenaline is made up on the left-hand side of that marker there. We've got all of the cofactors that create adrenaline. So we've got zinc, B1, B6, folate, iron, B3, B6, more vitamin C, more folate, more iron, more Bs, more vitamin C, more zinc, more magnesium, more vitamin C again, SAMe, some Bs and some folate, and then we can finally create adrenaline. So the problem there is if we're trying to create adrenaline all the time, and we've had a discussion with this client about what they're actually eating, we can talk to that about which vitamins and minerals they might be showing signs and symptoms of being deficient in. And often is the case with my adrenal fatigue clients that they're the ones that get sick when they go on holidays. They never have time to be sick, but when they go on holidays, boom, that's when they're sick. Interestingly enough, your adrenaline sucks up all your zinc, your C, your zinc, your C, your zinc, all the way down that pathway. And so it's often the case that you're not able to look after your immune system, let alone this adrenal pathway. Now, your body preferentially uses this adrenal pathway over anything else. If you lay down with a heart attack, you're not going to be able to move your arms or your legs, but adrenaline will still pump through your body. So the thing about that is on the right-hand side there is how our bodies create serotonin and melatonin. So serotonin is a cofactor that, is a neurotransmitter that looks after your happy hormones, makes you feel joy and connected to other people. And you'll see just below it says melatonin, and melatonin is a neurotransmitter that looks after sleep. Nice, sound, sustained sleep. The thing is, all the way along that pathway as well, we need the very similar kind of cofactors. Up the top, again, we've got zinc, B1 and B6. Then after tryptophan, we've also got folate, iron and B3. Then we've got zinc, magnesium, B6 and vitamin C pretty much in the same ratios as we do to create adrenaline in the different types of areas of that pathway. So if your body's being busy with that mental stress, or if you've got a long-term physical stress, or if you've got that long-term psychological stress, particularly PTSD types of people, then your body's going to be using up all of your vitamins and nutrients to keep that adrenaline going, because it's preferentially trying to keep you safe and keep you alive and keep you fighting or flighting. And there isn't necessarily going to be a lot left over for serotonin, because it's not like you skip around feeling joyful and happy while a saber-toothed tiger is chasing after you. So if we downregulate that system and upregulate the adrenaline, then we're still going to have a little bit of a problem. Over on the left-hand side, we are going to have a little bit of a problem with our GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter that looks after your proportionate reaction to things that are occurring. It also is really vital for sleep and looking after your long sustained sleep. So GABA is a neurotransmitter that also needs a lot of B6 and magnesium. It also uses the other cofactors along the way as well. It's usually the last one to go in my experience. So GABA is one of the ones that we have when someone is long-term adrenal fatigue and they have really, really restless sleep, or they have it's not necessarily difficulty going to sleep, it's the ones where they can't maintain their sleep and they have disproportionate reactions to things that are occurring. So there's a tendency towards anxiety and things like that. Then GABA and some of the GABAergic types of herbs can be really, really beneficial in that kind of essence. You can also see GABA drop about a week before a lot of women's periods are due, because GABA and progesterone often use huge amounts of B6 and magnesium to work properly, as well as some other biochemical pathways that they have in common. But mostly women will get to notice that having a disproportionate reaction to things that are occurring. So that's GABA, adrenaline, and serotonin. And if adrenaline in particular is running the show because it's your survival mechanism, it has to happen, then long-term adrenaline pumps your heart really quite quickly and quite fast so that you can get all that focus and concentration to your brain, so that you can either fight or flight. The thing that kicks in after long-term adrenaline is going to be cortisol. And so cortisol is your long-term stress hormone. And cortisol is made in quite a similar fashion, except its backbone and its to be able to make it, you need cholesterol. So often we've got these situations where some of these steroid hormones aren't being made because of Lipitor and things like that, aren't being made the same way at least. So cortisol needs very similar cofactors: zinc, B1, B6, folate, iron, vitamin C, more magnesium as well, and it also needs good fats. So cortisol is going to kick in long term after adrenaline's been going for a long period of time, and cortisol has a generalized fatigue pattern. And the fatigue pattern that we tend to get is one of waking up tired in the morning, generally not hungry, going for a coffee or a sugary kind of treat first. Then we go and we want lunch a little earlier, usually because we haven't actually fueled up in the beginning. Generally, my clients will be having their lunch about 11 o'clock. They'll have a massive drop in energy about 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They'll come good around dinner time, and then they'll have another crash about 9 o'clock at night. If they that crash, then you're going to see their cortisol around about 11 till 1 a.m. And that's when they can't sleep either. And then they'll generally go to sleep, but they'll wake up again exhausted in the mornings. So depending on how far gone their adrenals are, we get to have a look. So case one. Case one is a female who has had, this is the type of thing that I see fairly frequently. This is kind of like a stage 1 adrenal fatigue type of experience, where we're waking up tired and then at night having difficulty sleeping, specifically because there's so many things going on in the mind. So this woman has had a history of being fatigued, and has had a history of not being able to sleep, preferring to go to sleep about midnight. And she's also had some hormone issues that we've looked after before as well. So last week we talked about the salivary hormones, and those the top ones there. The estrone is a little high, which is E1. Her progesterone is completely fine. Her testosterone is a little high, and a DHEA is double what it needs to be. So the reason for this is that, like we talked about last week, the DHEA is a precursor for the testosterone and the estrone, and it has flow-on effects for downflow effects of increasing those. And her liver's capability of getting those out was quite difficult. She was having jawline kind of breakouts every month, and but she had a lot of drive and purpose. So having a lot of drive and purpose can sometimes be a double-edged kind of sword, in that, particularly with the women that I see, they get all of their amazing wonderfulness at night. So they call themselves night owls. And those night owls are the ones that start to fry out their adrenal glands. So as you can see, her cortisol, which is the 4 different measures that she spat in the tubes for over the day, her cortisol is about 19 in the mornings. You want it to be about 25. And then the next cortisol down was 13, and she was experiencing that pattern where she ate about 11 o'clock and felt much better eating at 11 o'clock than waiting all the way until midday. In the evening, she came good, but her cortisol was about 8 and it needs to be about 10, so it's still a little on the low side. And then at about 8 o'clock, she would have this huge burst of energy, and she wouldn't be able to go back to sleep until about 1 a.m. She would have this burst of energy and mental clarity, and be able to think and focus and concentrate more than she generally does during the day. So she'd stay up until 1 a.m. and that's the time when your adrenals are trying to recollect and recuperate and look after themselves. And if that doesn't have an opportunity to happen, then we start to get this fatigue pattern again happening in the mornings, where the cortisol doesn't get to where it needs to be and we're not hungry, and then we eat a little early, and then we're not feeding our adrenals for that 2 to 4 o'clock slump, and then we're going and kicking it off again later on at night. So the thing there is we want to make sure that we're supplying all of those nutrients for that cortisol, or we're supplying the lifestyle mechanisms that can help that cortisol go up at the specific times of the day. So specific times of the day that we need to be doing those are when she's at her most tired. So first thing in the morning, she was going to CrossFit, which is just completely screwing with her cortisol in itself. So we swapped CrossFit for yoga after a long couple of weeks trying to talk about that. And she started going to a little bit more gentle types of exercise in the mornings. And what she found was her energy tended to go up. Then she would be able to eat, because she was actually in a kind of not a fight or flight kind of mode, a more a rest and digest type of mode. She was able to eat. Once she started doing that, she was feeding all the vitamins and minerals. And so then she was able to go further on into the day to about midday and be able to eat then. She was feeling a lot better. And then she actually set up an alarm to go to bed. So she set up an alarm so that she wasn't sitting on her computer, so that she wasn't checking out her blue screen. At 9:30 at night, she had to go to bed. It was like making an appointment. And I tend to do this type of thing with a lot of corporate women because that sets them up for the perfect day the next day. So there we go. That's this is a really generalized one, and then we'll go more in depth to case 2. So case 2 is a little bit more, if we were going to talk about it, more chronic fatigue-like symptoms. So chronic fatigue seems to be a case of more chronicity when it comes to cortisol, and cortisol just keeps creeping up and up and up and up, and then eventually it breaks and we end up going to 0 cortisol. So what we find with this client is that she had long-term fatigue and long-term stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of that kind of stuff. So the sorry, I'm just checking the messages. Yeah, I can see that you can't see everybody, and I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to explain it all to you, because starting the entire process again won't actually allow us to really get back in on track. So I'm going to be explaining it to you, so have a good listen. and the recording will be available after it. And I'm just going to go through and explain all of the different things that are in here. And for anyone who's listening on the recording, I hope you can see this a little bit better. So these are her salivary hormone results at the top, and then she's got cortisol again at the bottom. So what we want to make sure is happening here is that we're taking a really good chat to the client about her stress. When DHEA is up like that, it's a red flag. Whenever you see the DHEA higher than that 8.79, then generally, unless there is any other kind of really obvious signs of other things happening for different tumours and things like that, but DHEA is generally a really obvious stress sign. DHEA is very, very sensitive to the amount of stress that's out there, psychological stress in particular, and you'll notice when it's up, then you'll start to kind of just gauge your eyes down to the cortisol generally. When it's up, it also spikes up the testosterone and it'll generally spike up the estrogen. So the thing was, we were checking out all her other hormones, and in actual fact, her other hormones were totally fine. So there wasn't actually something happening hormonally for her just before her period. What was happening was a GABAergic type of response for her before her period. Because she was so high on cortisol all the time, so much adrenaline going through her system, her ability to regulate her GABA just wasn't there. So her cortisol, as you can see, in the mornings was 13 out of 25 is half of what it needs to be. She was waking up not hungry at all and hadn't been hungry for years and needed 4 coffees a day to get through the day. The cortisol was up around 37 midday, 37, which is twice as high as it needs to be. And then in the evening, it was 14, and it only really needs to be about 10. And then at midnight, it was 8. And again, that's 4 or 5 we want it to be, so that's double what it actually is. So as you can see, her graph and the things that we show the clients, this is why I do like the functional pathology testing, whereas general pathology, you're just going to get numbers. Functional pathology, you're always going to get some really nice, groovy things to talk to your clients about. A graph should be this generalized green slope down to have a nice sustained sleep in the evening. But in the morning, she's waking up with half of what she needs to be hungry, alert, and perky for the day. And then about midday, her cortisol is double what it needs to be. And so we had a chat, because I was a little worried about that. We had a chat about what was happening the day that she had the testing, and she was so worried about the test that she actually stayed home from work. So it wasn't that she'd kicked a toe, it wasn't that she'd missed her bus, it wasn't that she wasn't going to get a lunch early or anything like that, which is sometimes the case with the salivary hormone testing. You want to be checking what was happening for them the day of testing, if anything aberrant types of things happen. So she didn't have any of that kind of thing. She stayed home. So the stress of doing that type of testing for her is quite significant. Then the evenings, there was a drop, but it was high still around dinner time. I also see this slope, the opposite direction, a lot for mums. When it peaks around dinner time, and fly in, fly out husbands and things like that, peaks around dinner time, and then they're wide awake in the evenings, even though they're exhausted. So anyway, this one was high at dinner time, and it still didn't come down enough to be in a kind of safe rest and digest kind of zone. It was still in a fight or flight kind of zone late at night, at midnight. And so it was no wonder she wasn't sleeping well and was feeling exhausted. So again, the functional pathology testing you can see on the back here, if you can see it, I appreciate everybody's comments, is that you can get a little bit more information about what happens with low cortisol, what happens with high cortisol, what happens with low DHEA, what happens with high DHEA, common symptoms that they might be experiencing, and these are things that you can talk to your clients about, and other treatment considerations. So it's not just you saying random information that you may or may not have heard and they may or may not believe. You've actually got a pathology result here that says, you know, treatment considerations are rest. You need emotional rest, mental rest, and physical rest. You need moderate exercise, so getting up in the mornings but not doing anything that's crazy strenuous. So I call it gentle, non-competitive movement rather than exercise, because all of these are going to be spiking people's stresses. And then talking about different types of adaptogens, talking about all the cofactors that we talked about in that first diagram, the B vitamins, the C, the magnesium, essential fatty acids and zinc. And also talking about some of the other things to do with things that might be concomitant happening at the same time. So obesity, osteoporosis, hormone imbalances with female hormones or male hormones, and other conditions like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So a great opportunity to talk to your clients about this type of stuff. Great opportunity for you to be able to see the trend over a day. The types of testing that a doctor does is an AM cortisol. So an AM cortisol is is a serum cortisol taken first thing in the morning after a person has been starving all night, and possibly after they have been at trying to find a park and stabbed with a needle. So the cortisol that you're getting there is very different, and the reference range is entirely different. So those types of considerations have to be taken into account, and it's not going to be taken over the whole day. It's only ever done in the mornings. And what they're trying to look for there from a general pathology perspective is things like tumours and things like benign or otherwise on the adrenal glands in different parts of the adrenal gland. So they're not actually looking for the types of optimal health that we're looking at. They're trying to find disease states. So this is a pattern for stress, fatigue, and chronicity of anxiety and depression and things like that you'd be looking at these types of things for, and whether or not you believe that those things are contributing to their current condition, and they'll be more confident that there is a factor in there. Because often the other thing I talk to my clients about is that theory that if you stick a frog into boiling hot water, into 100-degree water from room temperature, it will die. That contrast of that temperature, it increases so quickly that it dies. But if you put it in cold water and then slowly bump up the temperature, that frog's able to survive. The thing is, these clients, and often I see health practitioners as well, we've slowly put up the temperature so much, we've slowly put up that physical stress and that mental stress and that psychological stress so much that we don't even realise we're sitting in boiling water. So until you've got these numbers in front of you, until your clients have got these numbers in front of you, you don't necessarily know what's really going on, because we're so good at switching off our capability of understanding what's happening in our bodies and switching on to all our hopes, dreams, goals, that kind of stuff, and ignoring the fact that we have these bodies and that they are telling us little signs and symptoms. But stress in particular is one of those ones where there isn't a lot of tangibility in the types of symptomology that you can get, whereas this is really tangible numbers. And when they see these graphs and just that general trend, there's a great opportunity to be really empowered by it, really confident that you can create change there, especially with easy stuff. I see massive changes with dietary advice, making sure that there isn't too much sugar, caffeine and alcohol in the system. The second you have that, cortisol spikes. Making sure that there are mindfulness, stress-based reduction, there's yoga, Pilates, and meditation types of practices going into these people's lifestyles. Making sure that sleep is one of the highest priorities you can get. Using those adaptogens in the way that we've been taught how to use them if you have a herbal background. Using vitamins and minerals at exactly the right time when they're at their most tired, so that they can even have a mindset trigger that they're actually looking after themselves. So using sufficient doses of the right B vitamins for them based on their either their need for activated or non-activated B vitamins, having sufficient vitamin C, having plenty of magnesium so that their sleep is engaged, their stress hormones are looked after. Zinc as well, if they've got that tendency towards immune system dysregulation, skin dysregulation, things like that. And essential fatty acids so that you've got those precursors in there for all of the steroid hormones. And again, it's a three-legged stool. So it's all very good and well for us to do this, but it's great for us to do this from a building blocks perspective. It's like we're giving all of the foundations to a building before you put the scaffolding up on the outside. You've got to get the foundations right. If we just put the scaffolding up on the outside and hope for the best and, give a blessing to the outside of the building, it's not necessarily going to stay together, in my opinion. Whereas if we get the foundations right, if we get those building blocks right, if we can do all of that and then put the scaffolding up and then do all of the other bits and pieces to help maintain that and make it beautiful and make it sparkly and wonderful, when it comes to mindset and energy and all of the other factors that we talk about in our consultations to their lifestyle and the way that they want to be the best version of themselves possible. If we can get those foundations right, then we're on the right track. So next week's webinar is the last one. It's on MTHFR and pyrroles and how I use them, cryptopyrrole, and how I use it in my clinic and how the actual tests are done. There is a whole bunch of misinformation going on around pyrroles and how the pyrrole testing and how it's done. And I just want to clear all the air because there is some really, there's a lot of false negatives going around with the testing, and it's because being able to get the test done properly is essential. Like coming from pathology and having samples that are either too small or haven't been looked after or haven't been treated in the way that they need to be treated gives false positives and false negatives. So you end up having a result that is completely not what you would expect for the client, and it's not going to be useful because you're not going to be able to really help them from there on in. I'm only going to touch on MTHFR and how I use that in my clinic and how I explain it. I'm not going to go in depth. There is plenty of other people who are really, really good. This is their zone of genius, MTHFR, and I'll write a list of people who you can go and have a look at. Ben Lynch is one of them, but I'm not going into that depth. All I'm going to do is give you a little bit more confidence to be able to go and get the test done, give you a little bit more confidence on how to refer it if you need to, and how to explain what might be useful for those clients when you get those test results back or if they come to you with that test result. So if you need any other assistance long term, I am doing a group mentoring call and it goes for 10 weeks. We're starting it in September, and it's a 1 hour a week group call for 5 to 10 people, and we're going to discuss cases and we're going to discuss pathology, and you can come to it yourselves and join in and bring your cases and your pathology and your queries and wonderfulness, and I'll be able to answer any questions you've got. And I can also answer any questions about running a clinic, doing these types of things, webinars. I've been getting a few emails and things like that. So if you do have any questions, feel free, Tammy@tammyguest.com, to flick me an email and I'll do my best to answer it. I do run a clinic. I have 3 kids and I run 2 other businesses. So I do get around to it, but yeah, I try to keep on top of things and get back to you, or get my team to get back to you as soon as they can as well. So thank you so much. You can find me on Facebook and in the Naturopathic Practitioners Network on Facebook as well. I'm in there often answering questions around pathology and other things, and hopefully I will get all of these things up on a page for you guys, and I'll send you the link. I'll direct you to the link after next week's webinar. All right, I hope you guys had an amazing time, and if you got anything from this and you wanted to share it, if it's useful for anyone who you know who is going to be treating anyone through stress, then please feel free to share it as soon as you get the link at the end. All right, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.